But what we can do is we can have some discussions here, and we'll bring that up and see what we can learn about the levee itself. Because if in fact if community leaders such as yourself are saying, Steve, based on what people are telling me, okay, something doesn't pass a straight face test here, then it's worthy of us to look at. Okay?
And what I would like to see.
Can I
sure,
finish this?
Certainly.
Because it's also important for us to get to the next stage, and that deals with trust, right?
That's right.
All right. So go ahead, sir.
What I would like to see, if we were to raise some funding for the National Association of Black Engineers to do a study on that levee, would they be granted access to the levee? To do a documented evaluation. Budget neutral. We'll pay for it. And let's see what it is. But when my former chairman, who is a very accomplished engineer, Stanford trained, Bechtel trained, tells me he cannot find a logical explanation if he follows up. He's not saying it was blown up. He's saying he cannot find a logical explanation for that levee breaking. The hurricane had come and gone. And we're talking about insurance. I've got a board member in New Orleans with $1 million home, $800,000 damage, and they're telling her it wasn't a storm, it wasn't a hurricane, it's flood damage. So you only get $280,000, and you come up with the other $600,000 you need to make yourself whole.
Ms. McKinney?
Yes, and to your question, I honestly don't know the answer, but I would say this. That one thing that I am clear on from everything that I've heard about what happened that night is that it's clear that the people in the Ninth Ward, that the people near the levee, that the people who were near that levee, that they did in fact hear some kind of loud noise that night. Somebody has to explain what that was that they heard. And that's what you kept hearing the witnesses saying. The obvious explanation to many people is an explosion. But there has to be some explanation as to what was that loud noise everybody heard that night.
Ms. Arnwine,
hundreds of thousands of gallons of water pouring in. It's got to.
Well, that would sound like bam, boom, boom.
Let me just say, we are going to look at that, and we don't know what is out there on.
Right.
What somebody may have on tape somewhere, what they might,
right.
but we're going to look at it, and it might have just been the rushing water. I think people are sincere when they come up here and say they heard a loud noise. I don't know that you're ready to jump to the next, but I think that's something we need to look at, and I take it seriously.
A representative during the congressional testimony agreed to look into why and how the levees were breached, but as of yet, nothing has conclusively come of that testimony. Remember the farce of the Warren and the 9/11 commissions, which proved nothing and only covered up the truth. It is up to we the people now to do the serious investigation and look into the possibility of the levees being purposely breached by explosives.
Says apparently there was a news report of 6 Army Corps of Engineers that were shot to death at the time of the levee breaches in New Orleans.
Is it possible that they were the ones that actually blew them up?
Thank you very much. I can't tell you enough how grateful I am for these questions. I wish we could do another 2 hours. This is the most gratifying set of questions I've ever had. Remember about 30 minutes ago I said, hey, y'all, the levees, Katrina, they were blown? Yeah, that's exactly the story I got, that there are Army or military special operations or maybe mercenary forces there, or maybe CIA forces. There were forces of dark intent there to destroy the levees. What I was getting at the time was that there was actually a firefight, you may have heard this story, between New Orleans cops and elements that were trying to blow the levees, where there were actually battles in New Orleans going on between the cops and the forces that were there to destroy the city. If you look back in time, you'll also remember that you were hearing things about how the police had lost radio communication and how they couldn't get supplies in.
Right.
Folks, all I can say is if you go to my site, you'll find that we did an analysis of Katrina as it was going on. We call it BONO, Battle of New Orleans. because the way we read it, that whole thing was an extermination job. I know it sounds real cruel to think it. Daniel, you asked me earlier, how can these people rationalize the murder of 3,000, 30,000 people? My answer is, well, they did 3,000 in September 2001. They did 10,000 in August 2005. That was an extermination job, man. When people say, well, yeah, the system really screwed up, no, it didn't. The system intended to exterminate New Orleans. It was the poorest, most minority-controlled city in the Gulf Coast. The elimination of the people who lived there made the state of New Orleans go from being a blue Democratic state to a red Republican state, and it opened up the offshore facilities of the Gulf of Mexico south of New Orleans to further petroleum exploration. In other words, it was a murder, a mass murder.